welcome back to our interview with Euro's amazing members around the world. I'm really, really pleased to be here again with Anna Kavelj from EWR in Australia. Anna, this is the third time that we've talked, and it's always great to see you, but this is a very different situation to the last time we spoke back in, I think, May. How are you?
Well, hi, Dom. Thanks. I'm actually fine. But yes, I wasn't actually thinking that we would have a third conversation, because I thought we'd be coming through this and it would be all rosy and lights at the end of the tunnel and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, as I think it's been on international news, here we are in Melbourne in quite severe lockdown, 2.0, until the end of September, or was it the start of September? I don't know. So it's not great. Actually, it's a lot tougher. It's, you know, we have a curfew in place. It's don't leave the house unless you want to exercise. It's really, really difficult. And it's just mentally that much tougher than last time. Last time was exciting and scary, and everybody would band together and we'll get through this, and there was a mad rush, and now everybody's just completely fatigued. And we got a taste of freedom in June, going back to restaurants, you know, doing things that you want to do at the weekend, and then suddenly to go backwards like this, it's just, everybody was just so devastated. But it is only limited to Victoria. So it's quite a strange situation that other parts of the country, you know, al fresco dining, no need to social distance, no active cases, everybody getting on. And then you have this one state that is, you know, face masks mandatory and all this sort of stuff. But obviously for the whole country, we're all affected. The whole country is affected by what's happening in Victoria. Being based in Victoria, I feel like somewhat of a pariah. No other states want to have us. There are no international flights landing in Victoria into Melbourne at the moment. Promptly, then Sydney said, well, we don't want to have them either. Yeah, it's not great. But, you know, at the same time, as long as this has the desired effect of bringing down the numbers and controlling the situation and not letting the horse bolt, I think everyone's doing the right thing, provided that come September we are free again.
It is just extraordinary. And I mean, we were talking just before we started recording, and you were saying that the speculation that this wave has been caused by people who were coming in and then being quarantined. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Australia mandated specific government paid for quarantine hotels for the 14 days for all international arrivals. And what it is transpiring is that there was a lapse in the security protocols at the hotels in Melbourne, and the security guards, for whatever reason, contracted it, took it home to their families, and then it's, you know, then that's how it's happened. So Melbourne, I believe, went with private security firms. I think that New South Wales and other states used the police or ADF, the Australian Defence Force. So there's like a commission happening at the moment investigating what has happened. No doubt that will throw up some interesting results. But I mean, it is what we are, where we are. But I think it just goes to show just how incredibly contagious the disease is, the virus is. So yeah, lapse of security protocols, basically, I think.
And you were saying before as well that they've changed the level of the lockdown from stage 3 to stage 4. What did that mean? And you said, you know, you felt like you were being punished. What was that about?
Oh yeah. So I think because we'd had stage 3 before, and then we had our freedom, and then we started to see a recurring or a resurgence in cases. So then they implemented stage 3 again, which is still go about, but I mean, the shops were open, for example.
Okay.
And people just didn't take heed. Well, the vast majority of people did, but there's always going to be some who are going to flout it. And so they did. And so they had house parties and, you know, went about their daily life, and the numbers didn't go down as a result of stage 3. So then that was it, stage 4. And that's why a lot of people feel like we're being told off for the fault of a few people.
Yeah.
So hence the curfew from 8 p.m. till 5 a.m. I cannot tell you how eerie it is to be in a pretty central suburb and it's silent outside.
Wow.
And mandatory face masks and now no shops open, and so I think that's the same as what other countries had. We never quite got to that stage
Right.
in the first instance. Yeah,
that's certainly where we were in most of Europe. It was all stores closed except chemists and supermarkets. So yeah, but we never had a curfew, you know.
No.
And you could do the 1 hour a day exercise. But it's interesting that, you know, this is I can imagine that people just feel that taste of freedom, and everyone, you know, when we spoke last time, you're like, this is great, you know, we're celebrating. This is, you know, and
I think I think as well, you know, they've taken these very strong measures to avoid the numbers getting out of control, but you can't help but look at, unfortunately, other locations and think, well, you know, they're open and they've got terrible numbers. So, but, you know, ultimately it's the decision that the government's taken. So we just have to live with it.
It's very, I mean, it's very difficult. I like you said about the commission that's going on right now. I mean, my goodness, the next decade of our news is going to be about the investigations into what happened and what went wrong and what went right. But I mean, if you are talking about, so now also domestic travel has stopped. And when we spoke last time, you were actually doing domestic work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were also doing some work into Papua New Guinea, and then Papua New Guinea instigated a 14-day lockdown. So I feel like one of those dolls that gets punched and then comes back up again and then gets punched and comes back up. So yes, there's it is hard to do work when borders are shut. You can get, you know, permits to travel and exemptions. And the one silver lining I think at the moment is that the federal government very much recognizes that net inbound migration is required to stimulate and help the recovery of the economy. And therefore, they have now actually identified those industries which are critical to that recovery. And now they've identified, okay, fintech, engineering, mining, ag tech, you know, things like that. And we are starting to see some exemptions for travel and visas being approved. So those people who are on hold are starting to be able to enter the country. They will still have to do 14-day quarantine, which is now at their own cost, but that's the price you're prepared to pay if you're coming for 2 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So at least, you know, even though technically the border is shut and likely until 2021, we're hopeful that more and more skilled migrants will be allowed to enter.
I mean, that is the way that recovery has got to happen. And I mean, from that point of view, that's what I'm hearing from a lot of our members outside of Europe, that this is kind of the way that things are happening, that, you know, there are exemptions being put in place for skilled people in certain sectors. So I'm really pleased to hear that, at least.
Yeah.
You know, that is the key, you know, what our industry does is going to be key to economic regrowth. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think there is still very much a desire there. It's just a matter of when. So we'll be fine. We'll hang on in there.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be really interesting to find out from, you know, when you do start working with people again, you know, I would strongly imagine from my personal perspective that people are not going to be put off coming to Australia because of COVID. I mean, it's all over the world. Australia is still a very desirable destination for an expatriate.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I think so, very much so. Like it's pretty aspirational location.
Exactly.
And in many ways, it's still a very kind of well-run country.
Absolutely.
First world country. And in respect of COVID, we've only had 21,000 cases in total. I mean, it's not that much.
Cases, 21,000 cases.
Full stop. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is what we were talking about before. It's like, you know, one of the world's great metropolitan areas has been shut down on that number of cases, whereas in the UK, we've had tested 346,000 cases and 40,000 deaths. You know, and yeah, it's just extraordinary. Yeah. I'm so, you know, that I think ultimately, I think Australia will still come out of this very well.
It's just that this is just another hurdle, and I think it's unfortunately it's going to hamper the economic recovery. Like the JobKeeper subsidy, which is the government has now extended until the end of March for the whole country, not just for Victoria, but they've relaxed some of the eligibility criteria, knowing that Victoria will have been hampered by this further. So the government clearly sees that people will be struggling, businesses will be struggling until the end of March. So that's good that they see that. So that will keep everybody going, I'm hoping.
And how are people, I mean, what's so interesting about Australia, like, you know, like the US, like Canada, like Germany, you know, it's a federation. How are people, what's the kind of national mood in Victoria as opposed to the national mood outside of Australia?
Oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I should get into the national moods. There's a lot of people who are fairly disenfranchised in Victoria at the moment, but equally, you know, there's a lot of people still thinking that this is a short-term pain that we all have to go through to save thousands of lives potentially, and that's absolutely worth it. So, you know, there's two sides to every story. I think the mental toll is going to be quite significant. The government has extended the number. I think they've increased it from 10 sessions to 20 sessions available for counselling on Medicare, the state health system.
Wow,
yeah.
I haven't heard that anywhere else.
Yeah, so that, you know, that's another good thing to recognise, that this is really hard. We're back at homeschooling, you know, that's really tough. No daycare, no kinder, all of that sort of stuff. So that's all quite hard. But it is strange because I have a team in Sydney and a team in Melbourne, and the team in Sydney are no way, you know, dancing for joy. They're all feeling very sorry for us here in Melbourne, but also worried that they have a few small clusters, and, you know, is it just around the corner that they're going to have come to the same fate? So it's all a bit sort of tentative at the moment, Sydney, Melbourne. But I think in, you know, Perth, Brisbane, Adelaide, it's that much more relaxed, I would say. But getting on with life.
it is so, it's just so interesting the different international ways that this is being dealt with. I mean, look at the US right now with the extraordinary rise in cases. Europe seems to be relatively stable, but people are going on holiday, and
I know
it's extraordinary. Bryony, our ops manager, was on the Isle of Wight at the weekend, and her friends that she was staying with said there are 3 times more people on that island than there would normally be in August. I know. You know,
I can't go to my next suburb at the moment, so
yeah. Listen, we'll catch up again, because I would very much like to do that, and find out how you're doing in, you know, so fingers crossed stage 4 will end on September the 6th, or are they saying that you might go back into stage 3 before that?
Oh, I think there'll be a very much, well, I don't know that they're talking about stage 4. To be honest, they're being very non-committal about anything at the moment. But whatever we do, it'll be a very gradual easing for sure. So we just have to hope and pray that this has the desired effect. But I think it is already now. We can see it's starting to drop off. And yeah, so we hope that that will have the desired effect, and then we can start to get back to normal, as in many other countries.
It's, I like what I was saying. I mean, I can imagine it's very traumatizing to have been, you know, put back into this. It was bad enough first time around. So
yeah, and I think that, you know, also it's important to note that we're in the middle of winter at the moment. So come September, we'll be going into spring, and that will make things a bit easier, and hopefully, you know, less flu-like symptoms and things like that going around. So I hope that nobody is watching this in other countries in the Northern Hemisphere thinking that this is around the corner for them in winter. I very much hope that's not the case.
So do we, but it is interesting how right now the news media is dominated by second wave and preparation for, and our Prime Minister has said we need to prepare our health. So it's like we are being primed for, you know, get used to this. And there is
fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. I should just go to Mallorca while I can, but I'm not going to. Listen, let's catch up again end of September, beginning of October, find out how you're doing. But in the meantime, stay well, stay sane, and
thank you. I will try.
Lovely to see you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dom.
We'll catch up soon.